All right, this is the recruiting corner of the On Your Mark show, brought to you by Epic Sports Apparel. At Epic, we just wake up and go hard. Will you rewrite the narrative? Also, this is brought to you on the Pulse Radio 105.4 RPWP. The On Your Mark show will appear there every week, Wednesday nights, 7 to 8. This week, our special guest, let me tell you a little something about this young man. He has an extraordinary story. He is a Division I track athlete at the University of Texas, San Antonio, in San Antonio, Texas. He's right now preparing for his junior year this spring coming up for his track season, but he was also a multi-sport athlete in high school. So we're going to talk about his roots from high school, where he started out, and then this is the recruiting corner. Is going to be parents, athletes. This is going to be for you. This is where we're going to instruct you, give you advice about recruiting, what you need to do, how you need to prepare, because it's more than just the field. It's also in the classroom. So we're going to always here on the On Your Mark show give you the goods. We're going to give you the ingredients to be successful. So we'll go ahead and bring in Caleb Campbell from the University of Texas, San Antonio, and we'll start with his history, you know, how he started and what he does to keep himself in shape, you know, just the whole kit and caboodle. So we'll take a small break for some station identification, a commercial break, and then we'll come back in with Caleb.
Listen to the hottest, hippest, black-owned internet radio station, thepulseradio.com, 105.4 RPWP. You can have your own show. You want to talk about politics, you want to talk about sports, you want to blog and talk about life in general. You can have the guests that you want on your show, on your time slot, on thepulseradio.com. Hit us up and let us know if you want to get your own show, we can make it happen. 105.4 RPWP. ThePulseRadio.com.
All right, back on the On Your Mark show. This is Mark Henry. Special guest on the recruiting corner, Caleb Campbell. Caleb, how's it going?
Man, it's going pretty good, man. How about yourself?
Oh, man, can't complain, man. We're having, we're in a tough times with the country, the world going through this pandemic, but we're surviving, man. And I appreciate you giving us a little time to reflect back, tell your story, and also give parents and athletes, kind of a little background of what it takes to be successful, not just at the Division I level, but any level. You know, a lot of times kids get hung up on, I want to be Division I at any sport. It could be tennis, it could be volleyball, yourself being a track athlete. But we'll dive back into what you're doing now. But let's just backtrack a little bit. Tell everybody where you started from, the sports you played growing up, and then we'll get to high school.
Okay, well, I started playing football around 6 years old, and my first love was football. And, my dad, he actually coached me since I was 6 years old. And when I got into track, what he noticed was basically I would run, but I would always stumble into the ground because my turnover was so fast. So he was like, you know what? You need to run track. And I remember telling him way back in 2010 at the Texas Relays, the first time I've ever been to the Texas Relays. Anybody who's a track athlete, you know how big the Texas Relays are, not only just in the state, but in the nation. So when I see the men and women from A&M, LSU, Baylor University, Oregon, and I'm just seeing them flying down the track, I'm like, I want to run that fast. So fast forward, when I was 12, I ran for my AAU summer track team, the Houston Sonics. That was my very first summer track team. And one thing about me is I always loved to win, and I hated to lose. And once I got into the summer track programs and understanding the difference between football speed and track speed was also a big jump, and the workouts and, the consistent hydration, learning how to run properly. And it took years, man. Like the first 2 years, I got bumped out of nationals by one spot. But then my third year, I ran with the Houston Visions, and that was my first year actually running a solid 400. I went 50 point that year in a 4x4 relay. We were number 3 in the nation. I went 22-3 out of 8th grade. I was number 9 in the nation, and I went 11-3 or 11-2 out of 8th grade. So over time, I began to progress with my speed and my speed endurance, and that's where it all started. And that's just with track. With football, back in my days at Klein Intermediate, rest in peace to Coach Degenhart, man, we actually had a very solid team, man. I played running back, I played quarterback, slot, safety, corner, kick return, punt return, kickoff, you name it. So I was just an all-around athlete. So that's where it all started, man. You know, AYA, ODC, Inwoods, Dash Club, Southwest. You know, we have a guy in the NFL named Steven Sims. You know, D. Elijah Thompson. Like, all of these guys came from the same area. So it's just pretty cool to be at this level, man, and it's a blessing.
Well, definitely for the listeners, Caleb is from the Houston area, Houston, Texas, Klein Intermediate. It's a middle school, and probably one of the more legit middle school programs that feeds a lot of the high school area. A lot of the high school talent comes to those areas. Steven Sims, I believe, is wide receiver for the Washington Redskins at the moment. So that tells you some of the pedigree of athletes that he was around and got a chance to play with. Now let's talk about high school. You mentioned football. You mentioned track. What high school did you attend, and a little bit about your high school career?
I attended Fort Bend Travis High School, and I moved to Fort Bend Travis when I was around 14. That was around 2013. And being a four-year letterman, you know, on varsity for track, you know, playing track and football, it was kind of a change too. You know, getting used to the culture, getting used to the new atmosphere. You know, it was a big change for me, and I had to get acclimated towards that. You know, and you know, my freshman year, like, you know, I played freshman year football. I was on the A team. I started at running back and at corner and kick return, so I was still doing the same thing. And, you know, the same year, I made varsity for track and field. And, you know, I think the year before they went 3 rounds deep, if I'm not mistaken. So, you know, I'm pumped up. I'm like, yo, you know what? I want to be a dual sport athlete. And, you know, it was a very, very good program, you know, but little minute things they could have changed here and there, dealing with the leadership and the attitude with the programs and the students. But that all comes with the territory. And one thing that I realized is that, man, when you're going for the top, no matter what level you are at, you have to surround yourself around winners. So fast forward to my sophomore year. No, I'm sorry. I'm going to backtrack to my freshman year. So that same football season, the freshman team went about, I think we went 8-2. We won district play. But when I got on varsity for track, I placed third at district. I was an area qualifier in the open, but a regional qualifier in the relay. And our team wasn't nationally ranked. We weren't even ranked in the state. We were barely getting out of district. And that's one thing I wanted to change about the track team and the culture. Now, you know, at Travis at the time, you know, track was not a big thing. Like, it was never a big thing. You know, in the Harrison Twins, it was more of a hooping or a basketball culture type school anyway. So when I came, it was a whole different thing. So a freshman already being the fastest in the school, I had to change that culture. So when it came to the track and field program, my sophomore year, my junior year, we actually began to improve. And, you know, I won the 100-meter dash my sophomore year on varsity, made it to regionals, and I got bumped off for the 1 and the 2 and the 4x2. Then that same year for the track and field program, we were okay. We were top 50 in the state, maybe. But, you know, my junior year when it came to track, we went 125 at district, you know, and that was the first time we were top 20 in the nation. So we went to, not ranked, to number 16 in the U.S. I had a PR of like 10:44 or like 10:11, something crazy. They had something crazy, and to this day, I really don't know what I ran. And I won a 200 that same day. And overall, in my senior year, we actually ended up winning district, even though I was hurt that year. So each year we actually progressed, and that was the first district championship that Fort Bend Travis has ever accumulated for track and field. And even though I was hurt, even though I didn't even make it to state, I'm still very accomplished. And even when it came to football, once I got moved up to varsity, I actually played cornerback and kick return my first year on varsity, even though my position was running back. And, you know, getting you know, small looks by the University of Houston. I was talking to a special teams coordinator from the University of Vanderbilt, from the SEC. You know, Tyler Junior College, you know, little things here and there. But, you know, my football career was actually going pretty decent, even though I felt like I could have done more. But besides that, man, you know, I've been there, man, competing against the Katy Tigers, the Manville Mavericks, the North Shores, the Port Arthur Memorials, the Fort Bend Marshalls, in football and track. So, just growing up around a very competitive division, it kind of shapes who you are. So...
Well, that's definitely how it goes. Sometimes it's not a immediate rise to a certain level, or a track record that you've gotten. And when I say track record in both sports, to build you up going into your senior year. You mentioned your recruiting process, talking to the University of Houston and other schools. Now, football was probably more, we've talked off the show before. We've been leading up to this interview. Football was probably your favorite, but you love track as well. And you mentioned here a little earlier about there's a difference between football speed and there's a difference between track speed. Kind of break that down for the listeners that don't really know that, some other guys may be basketball and football, baseball and football and what have you. And being a multi-sport athlete, that's definitely how kids get recruited these days. A lot of times kids try to focus on one sport or another or specialize at an early age. But talk about how both of those combined sports helps you in the long run and the difference between the two.
Well, track speed, it's one of those things to where it's about, when you think about the laws of physics and you think about displacement. See, football, it focuses more on quick bursts, 40 yards, 60 yards. In track and field, the shortest race is the 60. And then on top of that, when you have a lot of muscle, you're very bulky. That's not going to work in track and field unless, that's strictly your body type. A lot of guys argue about DK Metcalf and, but Tyreek Hill and D'Anthony Thomas, people who ran track, LaMichael James, way back in 2012 when he played for Oregon, they can all tell you track speed is just a whole different world. And I remember when I first started running track, I would beat guys every time the first 40. I had one of the quickest starts, in summer track, but that last 60, that's when dudes start to pick up speed, and you see the form, you see how it looks like they're gliding on the wind, because football, you're not forced to run 200 meters, you're not forced to run 400 meters, 100 meters, and people actually undermine how fast just running 10 seconds alone in a 100-meter dash is pretty fast. But when you compare a 4.340 to a 100-meter dash, you can't truly correlate it, because the race is not determined by 40 meters. Usain Bolt clearly shows you that. Even Justin Gatlin, any track and field athlete can clearly show you that when it comes to strictly speed, and track and field is that sport where you specialize in speed and stamina. See, football, you're building speed, but you're building quick bursts. You're embracing for impact, things like that. So you have to understand how much effort and how much training it takes to actually be elite in track and field. So that's the other part a lot of athletes don't truly understand, how hard it is to get recruited for track and field. And once I realized how hard it was to get faster in track and field, it made me push that much more harder. So when you have coaches from Miami, Michigan, you get letters from Iowa, Texas A&M, UTSA, Oregon, Alabama, Oklahoma, you think like, okay, this is the real deal Holyfield, the Tyreek Hills of the NFL, the Christian Colemans. That's what you call speed. Now, football, on the other hand, if you can translate that speed on the field and you actually know how to play football, you're actually going to be a very, very liable weapon. And many guys say, oh, well, nah, you're going to get hurt because, you don't have a lot of muscle mass. And it depends. All depends on how you play the game. And most importantly, heart, man. And I think, those who played football in Texas, those who come from the old school, we were taught to play with heart. Those, especially if you played with AYA in Southwest, we were taught to play with heart. So if you can ball and if you have talent, and if you can translate that to the track, the field, the basketball court, you're going to shine, man. But don't ever limit your potential.
Well, the way you eloquently broke it down is great. That kind of gives people that don't know or don't have an idea, especially coming from, let's say, you're a seventh grader. This is your first time really getting football into your system, or just you haven't run track at a high level. You just kind of ran little league or lower. The competition is not as great, especially when you get to the high school level. And Houston is probably one of the most talent-rich areas in the country, not just in the state of Texas, for track and field and football. Everything is bigger in Texas, as they say. So talk about competing in that area, and what kind of things you were looking forward to in your senior year at Fort Bend Travis. And then after you finish that, we'll talk about the classroom, how important that is, taking SATs, studying, and how that shapes your recruiting outlook when you're looking at college as well.
Okay. Well, man, when it comes to competing in Houston alone, so you know what? I'm going to take it back to middle school. So when I was at Klein Intermediate, and I think I started running track in 6th grade, but we can't play sports unless it's 7th or 8th grade. But that 7th grade year, just in middle school alone, I was looking at the records, and I was talking to Coach Brew. His name is Derek Brew. Y'all can look him up. He ran in the 04 Olympics. A very accomplished athlete. Got bronze in the 400. I think they set the record for the 4x4. But so I'm looking at these records, and the record was like 11.3 or something like that. And when I was 12, my fastest time was like 12.9 maybe. And like 26. My 7th grade year, so I only ran like a 24, like 11.9, 11.5. But just even thinking about the competition in middle school, like I would be extremely nervous, but due to the caliber of my team, we had a very good relay team. So we actually set the district record in 2012 and in the 4x1 and the 4x2. So once I got my confidence up, and once I actually, I kept training and I kept figuring out how to run my races. And Coach Brew would always imply to me, hey, fix your start, fix your transition, and your top end speed. Now, we had a guy named Quentin Newton, went to Klein Collins. I think he went to Tulsa later in his years, but this dude would always beat me the last 20 meters of the race. And it wasn't until a district, I was the only 8th grader at the district meet, and when you hear your name in the finals, your adrenaline is just pumping. So yeah, everybody looking at you. Now this is just the Klein area. This is not even Houston. I'm gonna get to that. And once he popped the gun and I got out, and I forgot about everything, but I made sure that like the last 50 to give it my all, and I actually ended up beating him where it counted. So, and he was very hard to beat. We had another guy from Hildebrandt Middle School and a guy from Kreml. So, and these guys were all running like low 11s in middle school, 13, 14 years old. It was a really, really fast cats. So then fast forward to competing in the AAU during Olympics, in the AAU regional qualifiers in the Houston area. I dropped 2 seconds that same year, and I dropped like a millisecond in the 1. And it was very hard to get out of the Houston region just in AAU alone. So again, that middle school year, I had to push myself, and that's when I became nationally ranked. I was 4-time national semifinalist. We got 3rd or 5th in the 4x4 that year, in the finals for the 4x4, and we ran up. So we were running against 15 and 16-year-olds, not just the 14-year-olds. So in high school, when it comes to competing in track and field and football, when you're playing against Clear Creek, undefeated Clear Creek, when you're racing against Kerry Vincent, who played for LSU, that same national championship team that won last year with Joe Burrow. Now, he actually won the 200 at state and ran 20.7. So you have him in the region. You have Caleb Jolivet out of Manville, also the 3rd. He got 3rd at state. A 10-3 guy, Brandon Taylor, Jace Colmix, Jeffrey Poulon. Then you have the Port Arthur Memorial Relay team. One of the guys went to Auburn and played football. And then you have Ailey Taylor. They were our biggest competition in district. So just to even beat them, to get to area and then to get to regionals, it was crazy. And in Houston alone in 2016, to get out of my area, you had to run 10.5. That was fourth place, or was it 10.6? And that's how fast it was. And I remember that same year, it rained for a whole week. And, I didn't practice for 4 days, and we only did relay handoffs. Now, the worst thing you can do at track and field is not practice. And that same week, and, I was coming off, I was like number 10, number 5 in the nation. I got to area and got smoked that fast. That's how hard it is to make it out of Houston alone in track and field. Then you bring in the DeSotos, the Converse Judsons, the Lancasters, the Fort Bend Marshalls. And Fort Bend Marshall is under Travis, which they were 5A. So if you added them to the same region, it would have been that much more harder to make it to state. You ran a 125 and don't make it to state. That's how fast it was, and that's how hard it is.
Well, that definitely sums it up, man, and that definitely shows, listeners and people in general that are in that, track and field environment, that it's definitely hard to get out of that region. Always the top talent, so that prepares you to get ready for, like you said, regionals, trying to make it to state, and then if you're competing at that level, that makes college coaches from the track side come and look for you, and that they are looking for this type of talent coming out of the Texas area in Houston that will compete on the college level. So we'll take a small break. We'll come back and talk about everything you did to get to college. We'll talk about your grades. We'll talk about the life at UTSA and what it means to be a college athlete. Again, this is Mark Henry on the On Your Mark Show, brought to you by Epic Sports Apparel, and we'll take a small break. We'll be right back. It's playoff time in Texas. It's getting cold. Check out Epic Sports Apparel for your hoodies. Do you need a hand warmer? Go and check out Epic Sports Apparel. On Twitter at IamEpic247, on Facebook at Epic Sports Apparel, and on Instagram at Every Play I Compete. Do you want to just wake up and go hard? Do you rewrite the narrative? Check out our hoodies. Check out our hand warmers now on sale. You want a team discount? Reach out to Epic Sports Apparel. It's getting cold out there. You need to be warm. Check out Epic Sports Apparel for your hoodies. You want sweatsuits? It's tailor-made to you. Send in your measurements and be epic. We'll be right back with the next segment here on the On the Mark Show. All right, this is your boy Mark Henry on the On Your Mark Show on thepulseradio.com, 105.4 RPWP, the recruiting corner with Division I track athlete Caleb Campbell. Now, we've been talking to Caleb about his high school days, what it led to get to where he is. So now we're going to talk about the University of Texas San Antonio. So Caleb, give the listeners a little bit of background on how you got to UTSA, and let's talk about the classroom. What kind of grades did you have? Because that's very important. We don't want to leave that out when it comes to getting recruited.
When I first got recruited to UTSA, I actually contacted Coach Kareem Street Thompson. He was, I think, a 4-time Olympian. He went, his PR was like 998. Very, very well-renowned guy. Competed against Carl Lewis. And, I texted him on Twitter and I was like, hey, I want to come on a visit. And, he actually told me, like, well, I didn't expect you, to contact me. So when I got to UTSA, it felt very home-like. I didn't feel a lot of pressure. I didn't feel like, it was a lot of things I had to accommodate for. And, I talked to my dad about it. We got into a couple of disagreements, but one thing that has become very apparent about UTSA, it was more conducive towards my mental and physical health. And, battling through injuries coming off of senior year and sophomore year in high school, I had to understand that when you're competing at the Division I level, a diet is a big thing. The recruiting process alone actually, is rigorous itself. And when I went on my visit, and like I said, they were very welcoming, very friendly. And my dad told me, he said, hey, you know, you want to go to a university who they want you for you. You know, and of course it's big business, but at the same time, they want you for you, not just for athlete. I think that's one thing parents and a lot of athletes leave out. You know, we have a bunch of 4 or 5 star recruits on the same team, per se Alabama, per se Florida. You know, it's like, you know, you worked it hard to get to that point, you know, it's just to sit on the bench. Now, trust me, I'm one of those guys that wanted to go to a Power 5 school. But one thing I realized very quickly is that anybody at any level can compete. Seriously, you have guys coming out of the Division III level better than guys at the D1 level. So many guys look at UTSA like, man, they're not big, not a big-time program. But what is crazy, you know, just to even get here to this point is hard enough. And UTSA is not a small school, but compared to Power 5, people may say, oh, well, it's small, but you always have to build up a program. So when Kareem Street Thompson, when he recruited me, the track team was actually already, you know, they were already pretty good in the first place. So I signed a scholarship, you know, in 2016, and I went on a visit my junior year, and again, it was a very cool experience. I actually went on a visit to Texas Tech as well, and, you know, Coach Diego actually wanted me to come on a visit to Miami as well. So I know you asking, like, well, how did you end up there? Well, again, it was the camaraderie, you know. And once I got on campus, and concerning my grades coming out of high school and college, in high school I had about a 3.1 GPA, but like a 4.5 out of 6. I took AP classes in high school. Those of you take AP classes know how hard it is, but I was going through a lot of things mentally, and I could never get into the full flow of just being motivated about my schoolwork, and I couldn't just, sometimes I was there, but a lot of times I wasn't, because I wasn't used to all that pressure. So I know I'm kind of jumping around, but when it came to my grades, when I got to college, you know, you had to learn how to talk about time management. You had to learn that, hey, you can't go to a party every 2 days. You got to go study for this upcoming test, because your scholarship is also on the line as well, and paying for college is also expensive. So when I got to college, I maintained a 3.0 my freshman year. My sophomore year, I had a 3.2 GPA. Now my junior year, I bumped it up to a 3.6, then a 4.0, or a 3.97. I almost made the president's list. So each year, I've learned how to really get in tune and enjoy being successful, not only off the field, but off the field and on the field or on the track, because all of those things correlate to how you think, you know, in life. So if you win in the classroom, you're also going to win on the track or on the football field. So grades are very important, man. Grades was actually one of the biggest things that got me a scholarship, and you would not go far if you do not have the grades. So your SAT, the ACT, all of those things are important. Now they do take into account, your GPA, what classes you're taking. And, even though the GPA requirements aren't typically high for an athlete, you still want to aim for the 3.5s, the 3.0s, the 4.0s, because you want to build your resume. So grades are a very big thing. It is not just accumulating the grades, it's actually applying what you've learned to be intuitive. Like, how are you going to use your degree? How are you going to use what you learn to further enhance yourself? And it's the same thing with the track and field. So grades are a very, very important thing, man. And UTSA is a very, very good program. It took me a while to get accumulated to it. And I also had to lose a lot of weight, man. So for you athletes, look, diet is the big thing. Mental health is a very, very big thing. And that's how I got to UTSA, man. Again, like, they were very family oriented, and, they just wanted me for me. And they can tell you it was a couple times where I should have been gone, but because I kept working and because I kept improving, even though I didn't even accomplish what I wanted to accomplish in college. But seeing how hard it took to get here, you start to appreciate, the blessings. And once you start to understand that, and once you let go of all the negativity, that's when you begin to elevate. That's when you begin to realize and say, hey, you know what? You're here now. You know what I mean? Make the most out of your opportunity, because you have guys years down the line that go pro. When it comes to track and field, is a whole different topic when it comes to becoming pro. One guy turned 20. He didn't go pro until he turned 27. But education, man, education is a very big thing as well. Has a very, very high graduation rate anyway. And, it's been a very good ride, man. Just being on ESPN, being on SEC Network, it's been very, very cool, man. And I appreciate it so much.
Well, it's definitely says a lot when you mentioned about time management. That is a big key, and a lot of times that kids don't realize that those are things that you have to do. In the social media age, everybody's a big gamer and video games and stuff like that. And then you mentioned, trying to have a social life. Those are all things that and rigors that you have to balance. Being not just a college student, but being a student athlete, and that you brought those things up, which I think listeners need to know and kids and parents need to know about those things. You have to balance your life. You have to have great time management and skills of being, organized as well. And you talked about those things, and I think that's what, guys, you need to hear. You have to be a professional. You talked about having a scholarship. This is a business as well, especially at the level that you compete at. It's a business. You're kind of in a job, so to speak, correct?
Yes, sir.
And that's the things that kids need to hear, man. Again, this is Caleb Campbell. He's a track athlete at University of Texas, San Antonio, here in Texas. I think you guys are in Conference USA, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. That says it all. He's competing at Division I level. He's done it, man. And Caleb, I sure appreciate you joining us on the On Your Mark show. Now, this part of the show, I'll give you a chance to kind of give you shout-outs to people that will be listening in, some people that helped you along the way. And then towards the end, go ahead and promote your podcast.
Okay. Yeah, man. Shout out to my parents, man, my father, my mother. They're out there doing their thing, man. They can tell you, man, my parents are hard on me. My mother was, she was very, delicate, but at the same time, she was still, bring to that level. But, Coach Tyrone, all them years running 400s, I hated them. But, I saw him at Rice 2 years ago, man. He was just like, I'm very proud of you. But shout out to Coach Tyrone. Shout out to Coach Brew at KI, man, still doing this thing. Even Coach Coleman, man, and Coach Hollis, man, and Coach Dakenhart, rest in peace to his soul, man, because, when you have a coach, he told me before, like, hey, like, I wish you were my son. So sometimes you don't realize, to appreciate certain coaches. And, we might not agree with everything they've done, of course, man, but at the same time, like, you have to take the positive of what they gave to you, man. Coach Al, rest in peace, Coach Al, man, Coach Robinson, man, Coach Haddon. I know he probably don't even know I'm on this show, but all the coaches, even Coach Johnson, everybody, man, just in some way, type of form, they all helped me get here. And I always want to give credit to where it's due. And one thing I will say to the athletes out there, man, like, you always want, if your coaches do not have, your best interest and actually getting to the next level, man, don't be afraid, to be honest. Be respectful, but be honest. It's a lot of things that athletes don't speak on, and that's a very big thing. Coaches, you're like a parent outside of the house. So at the same time, like, outside of college, high school, middle school, summer track, little league, it's bigger than a business. It's a way to build up young men and young women, teaching them to fight through adversity. When it gets hard, don't be quitting, don't cry, stuff like that. And that's one thing I feel like, sports in general just needs to bring back. And people may not agree with me, but, just from my personal opinion, coaches shouldn't let politics get in the way of improving their athletes. Because if you want to win a state championship, if you want to win an NCAA championship, sometimes that family vibe, your coach, your school, your coach that needs to be there. And that's a story. I hear many stories of athletes who complain about, basically guys who've never truly worked, and the coaches pick him over a certain athlete. That shouldn't be happening. It really shouldn't. And it's happening now. And maybe in the future it'll stop. But shout out to those coaches. But I just had to put that out there, man. And yeah, man. In my podcast, Inside Texas Sports, mental health for student athletes. I'm just talking about what goes on off the track and what goes on off the field and off the court. Personal things at home. Classroom things. The mental game. I'm sorry, I'm stuttering. Is a very big aspect of the game, and the athletes will tell you, man. Most of this is 90% mental. Your body can only do so much, so always make sure you're around winners, whether it be coaches, family, friends, or just associates, man. Always surround yourself with winners, man. Not to the point to where it's detrimental to you, but where it helps your whole team evolve,
Well, that's a great topic, Caleb, and we're gonna do some things in the future, man. Look for Caleb to be, a guest from time to time on your Mark show, just giving his insight on things like that. I think the mental approach on everything you do, not just in sports, but when you get out into the real world, when you get out into the job market after you finish college, after you graduate high school. If you don't go to college, you go to a trade school. All of those things go hand in hand, and the On Your Mark show is not just about sports, but it's about life as well through sports. We connect with athletes, we connect with coaches, we connect with families, and those are the things that we're going to be bringing to you each week on thepulseradio.com. And the On Your Mark show is going to be doing those things. This recruiting corner, we're going to have parents, we're going to have coaches, we're going to have athletes to tell their stories, because what I want to do is always give you the best information, to give you what you're supposed to be doing, to help you get recruited, to help you get to the next level. And, the next level can be NAI. The next level can be Division II. It could be Division III. It could be Division I. You can't discriminate. If they're offering you a chance to compete at the next level and to get a free education, you should take it. But Caleb, tell everybody where they can follow you on social medias, and your platform to follow your story.
Follow me on Twitter, K_Camp21, all lowercase. Instagram, K_Camp10. And if you have a Facebook, just type in Caleb Campbell, man. And I actually have a documentary on YouTube as well. Just type in Caleb Campbell, UTSA, track and field athlete. And yeah, man. Oh, and Snapchat, K_Camp21, all lowercase again. So.
All right, there you have it, man. Caleb Campbell, otherwise known as K Camp, man. I appreciate you joining me, man. I look forward to, we're going to be doing some collaborations here. He'll be a guest on the show from time to time. Look forward to that, man. And definitely check out his podcast, man. It's real dope. It's real insightful, from a athlete's perspective, but also a young man's perspective, going through, the pandemic, going through things in the world that are affecting his generation, man. And then, us, both of us being black men in this time and period, we need to get our stories out, because this is what we do. We're going to take a small break, and we'll bring in the next segment on Your Mark show. This is your boy, Mark Henry.